Okay, so we're heading over for our final presentation tonight, and actually that's the one I'm most looking forward to. That is why we put it last. As you know, we are together with Hughes now. We are frequently streaming the annual Lean Start conference right from the Valley, and that's one of the highlights. But what I actually didn't know is we have a Lean conference in Europe. And that guy knew about it and didn't tell me. So I'm happy he's here to tell us what he learned, what he saw, and why maybe we should go there. Okay. Thanks, Bernhard.
Thank you. Yes, I attended the Lean Conf 2013, not the Lean Startup Conference, but the Lean Conf 2013. And I'll give you a short overview on what that conference was about. What the topics were, how it was organized. I'll go into detail with some talks where I think they might be interesting for you. And of course I'll give a recommendation whether it's worth going there or not, 2014. Why did I go there? In the first case, I'm working for TNG Technology Consulting, which means I'm doing consulting, IT consulting projects for larger companies, for enterprises. And there I've made the experience in several projects that no matter what technical quality you deliver, how good the stuff is that you're building, if you're not building the right stuff, if the stuff you're building is not bought, is not accepted by the users, nobody will care how good the quality of your product actually is. The product will simply be dropped after a while, and everybody's going to be frustrated. So my big question currently is how to get bigger companies more customer-centric, how to get them focus more on what the customers actually need. And on the other hand, I'm a techie. I have a software development background. So these two questions, of course, these 2 points, of course, influence my view on the conference and the talks I attended, but hopefully I'll have some good points for every one of you. Lean Conf 2013 took place in Manchester, the 2-day conference, Saturday and Sunday. The first day was Lean Camp. Who of you has heard of Lean Camp or knows what Lean Camp is? Okay, so Lean Camp is an open space conference or an unconference. Does that ring any bells? Any more bells? Okay, so it's a sort of a get-together of all participants of that conference where there are no organized talks or no prepared talk agenda, but where every participant is allowed or is asked to prepare a session, to start a discussion, just to start a workshop. So the participants themselves actually form the agenda. And that was the first day. Day 2 was a regular conference with a task, with a talk agenda, and with featured talks. There were lots of guys from startups present, of course. I just went through the talk agenda and picked out some of them I found there. To be honest, I hadn't heard of most of these before, but it shows that there were lots of startups there, lots of people who actually had experiences to share. That was the agenda of the first day of the Lean Camp. You're not supposed to be able to read that. I just wanted to give you an overview of how that's supposed to look like. So in the end, we had 30 different sessions when the people attended. The whole conference, I would assume, had about, I don't know, 100, 150 participants, something like that. And there were topics like when to ignore data, for example. A pretty common topic, obviously, Lean and user experience. How to do minimum viable products. Experiences with metrics and how metrics influence decisions. What else do we have? Interesting session I attended was on hypothesis-driven design. So there were lots of different topics, probably something for everybody. I won't go into details here, I could say because there are so many small sessions, I only attended a few of them. The real reason is when I got back from conference, my second son was born, and that threw our whole flat into a big chaos, which meant I lost half of my notes of the conference, notes of the first day. So that's why I'm not talking about the first day. So now I'll give some insights into some talks from the second day. The first talk, which was more or less a keynote, was a product strategy. Was held by a guy named Des Trainer. Sorry, no pun intended. He founded several companies, and he also worked as a startup consultant, helping lots of startups getting picked up. And he shared his insights, his thoughts on how to define a product strategy, how to select features for your product. All that was stuff that he talked about. That was all based on a feature pyramid, or on a level pyramid, taking you from like 10,000 feet level down to the actual features. I won't talk about this vision point because I don't really agree with this one, what he said there. When he was talking about the mission, he meant when you start your startup, you have to think about your mission in the sense of you have to think of what do you really want to change, what is it that you want to make a difference with. And that's not about being number one player in the market or being one of the top 10 companies selling shoes or something like that. It's more about like how to make the world a better place. And he had some good examples from Twitter, I think, and from GitHub. GitHub, for example, states their mission as we want to help developers write better code in a faster way. So a concise description on what you really want to achieve. When he was talking about the jobs that your product has to fulfill, he had a really good point, I think. And what he said is that customers rarely buy what the company actually sells. Because in that example he had there, people actually, they don't buy drills. People don't care about drills. What they want to have is, they want to get holes. So if a company comes around that has a new method to make holes by super laser, same price drills, and doesn't make all the noise and doesn't produce that rubbish, drill producers will have a problem. So what you have to do is you have to understand the problems of your customers, and you have to find out what the solutions are for these problems. And only once you have found out about that, you can take care about what your product actually is supposed to look like and what your features are supposed to look like. Then the other points here, scope of your product is one step closer to features. It's about how to where in the whole process. If you have some kind of product, it's usually embedded in some kind of process. If you for example, sell flights, then before that people usually decide where to go. Afterwards they probably want to book a hotel and so on. So you have to decide on where your product actually has to start, and where in that process try to solve every problem that is around. So focus on the actual part of the process that is relevant for you. For picking features, he also had a good point. I think he said that there are always like hundreds of good reasons to put new features into your product. There's like this long list that everybody in the company always wanted to have. There are those customers blackmailing you. If you don't build that feature, we're not going to use your product anymore. And when you say, well, that was actually out of scope, they're going to say, well, you can make it configurable, and that only that part of the customers that really need it can use it. And so there are lots and lots of reasons to argument for new features, but what he actually said is, before you build new features in your product, you have to check your feature for several points. And every of these points, I'm not going to read them, but every point of these is really valuable. So what I actually would like to have is print those questions out and hang it in every product owner's office, so that they check whether the features they are asking for or they are planning to integrate in the product really matter. So we should really take care that the features that we're adding to our product are valuable, because every added feature adds complexity and makes our product more complicated. So we start with a drawback, and the new feature has to make up for that. So much for this talk. I thought it was really, really inspiring. This talk is also available on YouTube. I have the link on the slide, so if you want that link, just get back to me later on. The actual video is not from Lean Conf, but from the Lean Startup Conference, so there are actually speakers speaking at both conferences, so another good argument just to go to Manchester instead of going to the same speakers, or at least one. The next talk I attended and I found very interesting was by a guy named Dan Crow. He talked about his startup, or the company he's the CTO of, a company named Songcake, a London-based startup in the music business, and how they do the experiments. The talk was pretty technical because they talked about the technical infrastructure. Complexity, so they were in really bad shape actually. And what he then did was introduced a program which would probably shock every product manager, because what they did is they didn't produce a single new feature within 9 months, and even worse, they threw out like 80% of the existing feature set. But of course, that made them much faster. Velocity around 0, so getting that times 4 isn't that difficult. And of course, removing so much stuff also increased application speed. So all that, even though they gave up 80% of their features, it really increased their user satisfaction. And what they also introduced doing so was the Lean Startup approach, using hypotheses, using experiments. What they are now doing, they've tremendously increased their user base, and they've moved from sprints that they had before to a continuous flow. What we just heard, they're really practicing continuous delivery. They're releasing up to 10 features a day. They're releasing every single commit into production. The whole the automated testing and release cycle takes them about 10 minutes. What that also means is they don't need a fallback policy. They don't try to roll back if they have rolled out something that is broken, because they are so fast at fixing stuff and deploying the new version that they don't just roll it back, they just move forward and deploy the new version that contains the fix for the stuff they've broken.
Excuse me?
Yes,
Can I
sure.
just quickly ask, what does Songcake do?
You can register there and tell them what your favorite bands are, and they will inform you if your favorite bands are playing in the area near you, so that you are always aware of those gigs. And what they've also started by now is that they are actually organizing events. You can vote for your favorite artist, and if they have enough votes for an artist, they approach the artist and say, well, we've like 50,000 guys in London which we really love, we really play, and they've organized several concerts in doing so. So how do their experiments look like? One thing they say is, why are they doing experiments? They say you have to trust your users. Your intuition can be totally wrong. The only way to find out whether you're right or not is look at your users. And they introduced a term called minimum viable experiment. And what they're doing there is they're really putting the least effort possible in their experiments, in the technical and their programmed experiments, which means they are throwing away every experiment they've done and rebuild it from scratch once they decide that we really want to have that as a new feature. That's the only way they get to really putting the least effort possible into that experiment. One example, they decided to have like all those social buttons on their webpage, like Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff, and it took them 17 minutes from starting from the first like touch of the keyboard till it was in production, because it took them 7 minutes to just put mock-up buttons on their page and the 10 minutes release cycle. And that's why I really focused on that minimum viable experiment. Every new feature they are planning to build, they are experimenting that beforehand. And what they're also doing is, before they are starting the experiment and they formulate it, they bind the feature to a business goal of the company. Because what that ensures is that they are actually building features that fit to their existing business model. Yeah, that also has some drawbacks, of course. I'm not going to go into details there because I'm running out of my time box anyway. This talk is not available on YouTube, but yes, the next one is this again. That completely fit to my motivation why I went to the conference. Was by a guy named Barry O'Reilly. He talked about Lean Startup in the enterprise. And what he said was that one of the big problems of big companies is that they are not customer-centric enough. So the first thing, or the big challenge for companies, or the big challenge for enterprises, is to become more customer-centric. And that has to be so strong that big companies actually should incorporate customer-centric design as a strategy, and not just design by meaning layout, but the whole company should change into a more customer-centric way. And he came up with something he called innovation portfolio. That's not totally new. What he said is also the enterprises, the big companies need something like an exploration phase where they try out new business models all the time. It's a big problem, or I'll come to that later. So also the enterprises have to take advantage of the Lean Startup methodology and have to do lots of small bets on new business models, try them out, and try to get them going. This should be done by using small teams, just like in the Lean Startup area, cross-functional teams, and the important thing, teams with an end-to-end responsibility for the whole business model. Talking to the customers, deploying it on a production system, all that should happen in the same team, and that is something that is really a challenge for many big enterprises. In the next phase, he called it exploit, I would probably call it scale. The next phase, the business models that survive that first phase should be scaled up to an enterprise level. There, of course, you have the challenge of a small business model realized in a small team. Get that on a large scale, scale up the teams. How do your management methodology fit to the new situation? All that is something you have to take care of. That exploit phase. Position your successful business models. And what you have to keep up there is you have to stay with data-driven, fact-based decisions. Big problem that companies have, or big error they do, is they rely too much on their politics, on the internal discussions, on recommendations of internal marketing, on on product checklists, things like that, which are not fact-based and not based on what the customers really do with the product. So what is important here is to keep that that experiment style, to keep looking at the actual facts that you get out of your product usage. The next level, sustain, that's the level where the companies really try to make money with these products. And the situation with many enterprises is that they stay in that area much too long. So they have a successful business model, they are using that business model and they are tweaking it here, changing it here, there a little, but they are not getting new business models in. They are not realizing the point where that actual business model has probably run out of shape or has no market anymore. The example he gave there was Nokia. Nokia was a big player building phones. Everybody knows them, but they simply didn't get the new business model of smartphones. They totally lacked that, and that was the actual. So you need a retirement phase. You have to always to be willing to kill stuff. You have to see business model as transient in a way that business models come to an end. You simply have to have enough new business models in your portfolio in order to deal with that. Yes, there are several problems that occur in bigger companies regarding that. One is the culture with failure. In lots of enterprises, failure is simply not an option. So once you have a project and that project fails, your reputation is at risk. So nobody in such an atmosphere would be willing to start experiments, would start to try out new business models, because of course the possibility or the chance to fail there is very high, and if your company culture doesn't take care of that, you will never get people to try out new business models. Funding cycles can also be a problem, because when you start with a minimum viable product, it's not about making money in the first place. It's not about finding out how much money you can get out of it. And if that conflicts with the business or with the funding cycle that you have, with the funding plans that you made, then you have a problem getting your MVP or your experiments in line with these cycles. KPIs is also something that is very dangerous, because KPIs always are personal goals of employees, and if my goal, or if I'm measured at the end of the year in how large my department is, I will focus on getting many more people in. I will not take care of small teams, for example. Or if revenue or the increase of revenue is my KPI, I will also not care of experiments. I will not care of a minimum viable product again. So the tactics with which enterprises work, on which their daily business is based on, often conflict with the Lean Startup methodology. This talk is also available on YouTube. This time really from Lean Conf. So get back to me if you're interested. The last talk I want to mention, I'm not going to go into big details there, is the talk about talking to your customers. It was held by Rob Fitzpatrick, who also wrote a book called The Mom Test, and it's about talking to your customers in a valuable way. I brought my version of that book, so if you're interested, come by and have a look. And I'm not talking too much about that because it's available on YouTube, and he has lots of insights, and he's a hilarious guy. So I won't be able to take on his points anyway. Just a few points there. So he's talking about customer conversation, and what he says basically is there are so many ways to do it wrong. There are so many ways to do it awkwardly. So there's no guarantee that when you start talking to your customers, you'll actually gain anything out of it. On the other hand, the most precious thing you have as an entrepreneur within a startup is your time. So there's no point in just talking to customers so that you've talked to customers or to check it on a list. You have to do it right to gain things out of it. he made obviously lots of experience in doing it wrong, and he shares that experience. Another thing he says is compliments are your enemy, because compliments are more or less the false positives when talking to customers. As long as you get only compliments, or the other way around, when you get compliments for your idea, it won't help you anything, because you will keep with your idea and you will run into that direction, and if those compliments are simply made because people are nice to you, it doesn't help you anything. When you talk to people about your idea, you always have to ask them for a commitment. Always have to ask them, just pay the $10. I have as on my price list, and I will give you the information. Or let me talk to your development team whether my ideas are really realizable. So you have to ask for some kind of invest in order to find out whether people are really meaning it. If you just ask, don't you think it's a nice idea to not run out of coffee anymore? Of course, everybody's like, yes, sure, that sounds great. Wouldn't it be nice if you wouldn't have to go out to the store to buy coffee anymore? Yes, of course, everybody would say so. Okay, so here's my subscription form. Pay $10 a month, and I'll send you 2 kilos of coffee every month. And once they sign that, they really mean it. When they turn away there, you've made a good experience, but their compliments beforehand are not worth anything. Well, I did talk quite a lot about this, but so if you're doing anything with customer communication, customer development, getting out of the building, all that stuff, then this talk is definitely worth a look at. Of course, there were lots of other talks going on, different topics, different experiences, one more startup focused, one more enterprise focused. How about comparing the Lean Conf in Manchester with comparing to the Lean Startup Conference in San Francisco? Of course, as you can see here, they are playing in totally different leagues. On the other hand, being one of 150 is much more intimate than being one of, I don't have a clue, 5,000. Does anybody know how many participants the Lean Startup Conference has?
I think it was 5,000.
Yeah. Another big difference is the Lean Conf is for Europe. It's about bringing together people within the Lean Startup movement from all around Europe, not just from the UK, but from all about Europe. So, as we already heard before, the startup scene and the startup constraints in Europe are completely different from the ones in the US. So the people you're going to meet at the Lean Conf probably share much more of the challenges that you have. They've been in many more similar situations, like the guys you're going to meet in San Francisco. The flight is much cheaper, so I think it's definitely worth a visit. So last thing I want to say, it's going to be again in 2014. It's going to be again in Manchester. Well. It's going to be again in November in Manchester. Well, but still, my recommendation is if you're interested in getting in touch with other people, not just from Munich, but from all around Europe, if you want to gain from their experiences, it's definitely worth a visit. If you have any questions, just send me a note or come back to me now after my talk. Thank you.
Questions?
I have a question. Do you remember this guy, Sidekick, I think it was, who changed?
Soundkick.
Sidekick. Not on Dropkick. The guys, did they lose any employees? Did they mention it in the talk?
Yeah, that was one point I had on that drawback slide. Of course, if you change all these things that I mentioned, that's a big cultural change within the company. and not everybody within the dev team was willing to go with that change. So they had quite a fluctuation. He didn't say any numbers, but they had several dropouts because of that change, because of speeding up development like that. Of course, doesn't fit with everybody's working style. So that,
It's
yes,
quite
that,
a challenge.
that definitely happened. And I would have been surprised if that hadn't happened.
Actually, same company, same guy, same similar problem. Developers' problem is not really that the development team doesn't want to improve or postpone new releases until everything's fixed. It's more like people like marketing and sales who have a problem. Did he talk about that at all? Because he was the CTO, right?
Yeah.
So he's not the CEO of the company who changed it. Did he talk about internal struggles there?
No, he didn't. His advantage was that he came into the company exactly at that time, 2010, when they realized we really have a problem and we have to change something. So then they looked around for somebody who was able to help them, and that's why they hired that guy. Dan Crow was his name. Seems to be a pretty smart guy. He even has a Wikipedia page, I found out when preparing that talk. Before going to Songkick, he worked for Apple and Google. And was in Google, he was head of the web crawler department. So he was more or less the guy being in charge of Google getting all the information for their search engine. So he probably wasn't in the position to say, well, if you want me and if you want me to change or you help you with your problems, you're gonna do it my way. But if you're not gonna do it my way, there's no reason for me to be there.
Okay.
So that probably was pretty easy for him.
Probably.
Have you got an example from what you've been doing, Bernhard, in helping enterprises employ lean startup strategies? Is there something you can talk about?
Unfortunately, not too much. I've been spending quite some time thinking about it, and Gerd is laughing because we've had lots and lots of discussions regarding that. Currently, we're fighting with lots of these challenges or those drawbacks I mentioned which are there for enterprises. So we are currently still in the phase of gathering data, gathering information, gathering tools, gathering examples in order to convince people to try a new startup methodology.
Okay, so you haven't solved that concept
No,
yet?
unfortunately not.
Okay, but you want to?
Yes, we're trying hard to do so, and we're also preparing a talk, especially on that. But we haven't had any positive.
So can I compare TNG to someone like Accenture, or what's your main focus?
Bigger.
Only I should say something to that.
Yeah, maybe
We are sometimes compared to SD&M in good times. So software design and management is a famous company in Munich. They were about 1,000 people, are now called Capgemini, but are not the same company anymore. Or some people say we are a little bit like ThoughtWorks in Germany.
And how big are you?
140 people.
Okay.
About. Maybe
how aware are German companies about this issue? I mean, are they really looking out to adapt this approach, or is it rather you have to force it on them?
I think that the typical consultant answer applies here. It depends. So there are enterprises that are actually aware of it. I think we have guys here that can give that have made that experience, or that are working for enterprises, helping them taking on a lean startup methodology, incorporating that. On the other hand, of course, there are enterprises who are so busy dealing with themselves and which are so self-convinced that I might think they have a problem, but they do not think so. So I think you have the whole whole bandwidth, probably with a more weight on the haven't realized it yet side.
And who would rather realize it, like the management or the development department, or who's
I think from the experience that I've made is that the development departments realize it because they feel the pain, because I just said, you do the project, you do technically great, but your project is stopped after a year because nobody buys it. So these are the guys feeling the daily pain, or same probably with marketing. I mean,
They fired already.
of course, the types of marketing guys that have sensors for that, they realize there's something going wrong. But of course, there are like other marketing departments that state, well, we're in that business for 25 years. Customers are asking us, it's not us asking the customers.
Maybe I can add
Sure,
something.
sure.
So what I experience is that most companies that get in touch with me on Lean Startup for Enterprise either have a fading business model, so they are slowly decreasing, or actually they have a big bang in their business model. Like if you have the change in energy politics in Germany, and you had nuclear power plants up to this point, then you really have a problem. And if you're in that area, you're looking for how to rapidly innovate your business. And those are the companies with the biggest pressure, and they are really looking for any possible solution. And they are willing to change, and still it's pretty difficult. Because you cannot do it within the R&D department. You cannot do it in a silo. And that gives the hard part to those companies. And you can see great progress in mid-sized companies, like, I mean, we heard at Scout, so AutoScout has transformed 2 years ago, right? FriendScout went totally Lean Startup last year. And you can do that on very different levels. So one is actually start up with new ideas. The other thing is, even if you're into feature-based evolution of your product, you can actually also start working with hypotheses and really measure the ROI of your product development, which is what FriendScout does.
If you're in those big companies, how do you go end to end? Form a team of end to end in like this?
I've seen that model in theory a few times. Actually, I was willing to ask what Project Barry did. One of the approaches you can pick is to set up something like a innovation lab. We talked about that earlier. And that will usually be the first thing cut away again. Because as with every new idea, if you want to start it, a majority of cases will fail. So if the lab fails the first times, the first 2 or 3 times they're happy, yeah, we're failing cheap, but still they're failing, and they need success, right? That's the ultimate thing. So you need to make sure to be successful, which is actually easier on an evolutionary level. Because, like you said, I know it as feature pusher, right? Add a feature, add a feature, add a feature, add a feature. Dave McClure, I think he was the first one coming up with the idea, remove a feature every week. And you will instantly know whether it was important or not, but in most cases, expect your KPIs to improve, right? You usually won't start removing the login and logout feature, right? But you have so many fat there, you have so many features pushed in that you didn't make sure that they were not only shipped, but that you were taking care of the outcome, right? There's always a reason why you do a feature. So you need to look for the outcome, not for the output. And if you don't make sure that you finish the feature after the outcome has changed or removed it, which basically no one does that today, unless they do Lean Startup. If you don't do that, then your platform just grows and grows. You get additional features and they don't really change the outcome. So removing them is the first great step to evolve your product. But hey, getting those people buying into that idea is pretty difficult. But to add to that question earlier, if you have a product that simply sucks, that is not successful, and developers leave the company because they love the features in there, which fail for every customer, then let those developers go. You're not developing software to develop software. You're trying to deliver value to your customers. That's the story. And if you fail to do that, your business is going to be failing, and then you have to fire those developers one day. So focus on the value, deliver outcome, not output. Sorry for the interruption.
Valuable input.
Yes. It's a more personal question. When did you start writing a book? When was the first book? How long it takes to write a book?
I didn't write. I didn't do a book.
I didn't see
You should.
What do you buy it? You give me $20 and I'll give you the intro. What me writing books was probably more like the guys giving the talks who wrote books.
Okay.
So,
Do you plan to write?
maybe I should think about it.
Okay, any more questions? Yeah.
Me again.
Sure.
Just a quick one. What kind of people can you expect to meet at the Lean conference in Manchester?
Totally different people. So they were techies like me.
Yeah, my occupation topics.
Yeah, they were like people just starting their startup. People who've like bought their startup, sold their startup successfully to Airbnb and spend their time giving talks and conferences. You'll find people specializing on user experience, people doing lots and lots of customer development, for example. People who like are currently founding like the 15th startup because 14 have failed before.
But it's people from all sorts of backgrounds.
Yeah, all sorts of backgrounds, and as I said, all
professional occupations.
all from all over Europe. Like, of course, lots from England, from Manchester, but there was like more guys than me from Germany, so there were more guys in Germany knowing about it. People from Spain, people from India, we talked to people from Poland, so people from everywhere with any background you probably looking for in that context.
How much was it?
Can't recall. I think it was like $150 the conference ticket. Like when I had like flight, hotel, conference was the cheapest of all three.
Right.
So,
Lean budget.
so I don't know. Do you know how much the startup conference tickets were?
I think they're definitely over $1,000.
Yeah.
There are a lot of early birds.
Yeah.
Early bird and
But
super
that
early
was
bird.
still nearly
3 months later, it's early bird again.
It's cheaper if you go there as a speaker.
That's what I plan to do next time. There's an event next week in Munich. It's £2,000 for 3 days, innovation event.
Okay.
Anyone showing up?
Any more questions? Otherwise, I'd say you're around for one more beer, right?
Sure.
And I expect you'll be
Yeah.
back in 6 months with a presentation on how I got into a lean book writing project. Thanks much for your presentation. I loved it. So many cool stories. So many. I'd love you to add the links just as a comment to the meetup.
Sure.
That would be great, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay,
can do that.
cool. Thanks much.